Today, I am facing my fears of the 1250 plus lobbies now that I'm into the 1300 range again for ELO. I've played a majority of my games in the 1150 to 1299 lobbies, but now that I'm into the top 100 again, it's really time to start testing my skills against the best Pokemon Auto Chess players in the world. Now, I did play a few matches before this one, and actually managed to hit my peak ELO and just barely sneak into the top 50 on the leaderboard, so, of course, I will be describing myself as a top 50 Pokemon Auto Chess player for the rest of my life. The screenshot you see here was taken on February 11th, which will also tell you how slow I am at making these videos. Thanks, work. While I'm usually narrating over the 3 PvE rounds to start the game, there is one decision here that I want to specifically highlight. On stage 2, I decided to grab a Marill. It's way too early to commit to a specific synergy yet, but playing with tempo and win streaking is very, very good right now. Obviously, win streaking is always good to preserve HP, but tempo is very much rewarded currently. So even if I end up not committing to Water or Fairy, just having evolved units to have a strong board is very good in the early game. I get supremely blessed at this item carousel as the lone magnet component ends up directly in front of me. This is perfect, as I get what is arguably the best item combination in the game right now, which is Loaded Dice and Razor Fang. Knowing this, I commit to some early rolling to strengthen my board, and it only takes one roll to evolve my Klinks into Clang, who immediately gets those items slammed. Then, I level up to 4 and buy 2 melee units out of the shop to frontline for my ranged evolved units. But with the money I've already committed, I decide to just roll more, which leads me to a Burmy Trash, and this allows me to check my first artificial item super early, which ends up being a Macho Brace that provides a huge attack buff at this stage of the game. The first PvP fight is trivial, 3 unevolved units versus my team stands no chance, and this fight is over quickly. Ideally, I can eventually get a Razor Claw as my third carry item. While the ad pick gives me the 2 components I need, I can only grab one of them. I grab the Charcoal as I feel like it is the more flexible of the 2 items. Plus, it comes with the bonus of giving me a frontliner that activates Steel 2. Watching back, the correct play here is just to keep the Macho Brace on Clang until I can get a complete third item. I think I got a little too caught up in the speed debuff, so I switched it out for a Charcoal. With Clang being my only 3 range unit at this stage, I want it to be as strong as possible, so that big attack buff should have stayed on. Thankfully, this doesn't cost me the fight, as Clang output a ton of damage with solid contributions from Marill and Burmy. Continuing my trend of aggression, I take another early level to hit 5. This allows me to put a Nacli on the field to activate Rock 2 synergy for a nice defensive bonus. I face a couple of evolved units during the fight, but my items and synergies keep pushing my advantage. While the King's Rock can be scary, it isn't supported by anything else. Clang doesn't end up getting touched and deals more damage than my opponent's entire team combined. I have another Marill presented to me in the shop, but with how my team is shaping up, I don't think I'm going to end up playing Fairy at all. So I don't think I want to commit to an Azumarill. This is very much looking like a Steel artificial game given my current team composition. I sell a few units to hit 20 gold, then into the fight we go. In theory, early game ground buffs can be scary, but generally those ground units are being moved around often, so they aren't receiving the maximum benefits. Plus, with Steel 2 giving me true damage and Burmy holding that Macho Brace, my damage output easily exceeds any buffed up defenses the ground units may have. While I would love the Black Glasses to complete my Razor Claw, I didn't really want to add Glimmet to the game. There are a couple of poison teams that I don't want to have access to this unit, plus I didn't want to deal with a passive that spreads toxic spikes. With my alternative choice being a Magnet, I decide that is still a good route to go. This gives me a Punching Glove off the bat to pair with the Loaded Dice, or I can wait a bit to potentially grab an Upgrade or X-Ray Vision. Here we see another example of evolved units versus unevolved units. Even with a lot of extra shield from normal synergy, my team still outputs way too much damage. This team could have been a harder matchup if some of the units were evolved, but my power level is just too much for them, which makes sense, as that player was lose streaking during the early game. It doesn't happen to me often, but I have successfully win streaked all the way to Gyarados. Even with some extra rolling and early leveling, I'm still able to sell off my bench units to reach 50 gold for the max interest cap. Now here, I'm actually considering a pivot off of Artificial. I never saw Varoom in my shop to give me another Steel Artificial unit, and I incorrectly thought that Burmy evolved into Mothim anytime you switched regions instead of just the stage 20 region switch. After defeating Gyarados, I get another Magnet component, which is fine by me. I get a room in my shop now, and there is only one artificial portal. Unfortunately, it is moving away from me, but there are 2 other steel portals I can try to get. I initially move for the artificial portal, but see that I'm not going to make it. I react too slowly to the steel portal above me, which gets taken too. I see a fairy portal beside me. I decide to hop into it, assuming the other steel portal had also been taken. Hopefully, I can get a strong fairy unit to carry my mid game. I didn't. I got a support fairy unit. I know I can afford to take some losses, so there is time for me to pivot into fairy, though it is unfortunate that I probably could have had a Zoomerl here too. What is more interesting though isn't Milcery's fairy synergy, it's the Amorphous synergy. My first fight on the other side of the unique stage is the other undefeated player in the lobby, who seems to be in the early stages of an electric light team. Both front lines fall pretty quickly, as Clang is racking up damage. We end up in a 3v1, with this fight surprisingly looking in my favor, until the Rotom drone gets off a huge cast that nukes Clang's HP. Clang barely holds on, and a cast from it and Meryl barely gives me this round. I'm in between synergies right now, but am leaning towards fairy with my unique. I decide to go with Swablu as my ad pick alongside the Miracle Seed. A double Miracle Seed gives me a potential King's Rock for a frontliner. With the extra gold I have from win streaking, I push up to 6 now. I don't think it's really going to help me win anytime soon, but it does get me closer to finding more powerful fairy units. Right away, I can tell exactly how this battle is going to go, as this Lairon is out for vengeance. It quickly runs to the side to avoid being targeted by my ranged units, allowing its Soul Dew to stack up. An itemless Emolga is still able to output lots of damage, especially thanks to those electric synergy buffs. And then Lairon runs up to Clang and nukes it with a cast to end off this battle. The item I wanted the most, Black Glasses, gets picked up pretty early on. By the time it's my turn to pick, I'm not left with a lot of appealing choices, so instead, I grab a Silk Scarf here. I also decide to push to level 7 and do some rolling to strengthen my team. My intent is to grab more fairies, but after pulling a Ditto and a Vanillite, I start having some other thoughts. I'm thinking so hard that I forget that I get to add in another Pokemon to the field, and barely get Milcery evolved into Alcremie. And to be honest, I have no idea how this Pokemon works, or if I could have gotten a different flavor to evolve it. I pull a Wild Team with an Absol carry, which my Fairy Synergy actually gives me a good chance against due to its retaliation damage. Absol bows out pretty quickly due to the Flame Orb and the retaliation damage, and it's looking like I might be able to pull it out against a bunch of unevolved units. Clang puts forth its best effort, taking 2 out in a 1v3, but it's left at too low of HP to finish off Apalm. I feel like I definitely could have won this round with some better positioning and itemizing. With being level 7 so early, I continue to roll to stabilize earlier, and this pays off as I immediately hit a Goomy. This solidifies my pivot to Amorphous, so I sell Clang to move its items. Now that my team has some identity to it, let's see how it performs in battle. At least against this team, it's not super great. My team is still pretty weak, with my primary damage coming from crit AD. Fortunately for me, a Rocky Helmet plus Max Revive Gimme Ghoul eats a ton of this damage, but I'm liking the direction I'm moving in, and a few extra evolutions and Amorphous Pokemon can give me a very strong board. Well, how about that for strengthening my board? I grabbed a Silicobra during the last fight and get a very nice shop in the PvE round to further boost my team's strength. Hold off on buying a unit for now, just so I can stay above 40 gold for my interest. Plus, I know that I will want to move the items on Vanillite, so I hold off on evolving it for now. I decide to commit the Charcoal to craft a Punching Glove, which synergizes well with the loaded dice and Amorphous' speed boosts. Then, knowing I'm going to move my other items eventually, I decide to sell Vanillite before evolving it. Misdreavus is a fantastic unit, so I'm totally fine slamming items on it until I have to make a decision with my legendary at stage 20. I grab the other Vanillite from the shop now and throw in Silicobra to bump my Amorphous synergy to 5. As I was moving my mouse over to select the magnet, the timer runs out and thankfully I get the magnet anyways. Then we are off to battle. This looks like the beginnings of an Amorphous team that is clearly stronger than mine. Bug Synergy allows her to be too butterfree on the field, and a stacked up Electric looks ready to crush my team with its AoE casts, which it easily does. I lose this one handedly, but can hopefully up my strength with more evolved units. In the next shop, I'm able to pick up a Vanillish to start bolstering my backline. I'm still a little unsure of what to do with my items, but I still have enough HP to not have to make any immediate decisions. Then, I match up against a Psychic Light team with a Spell Crit Kadabra. Between the Light Spot and the Scope Lens, Kadabra is going to be teleporting all over the place during this fight, which is exactly what happens. Misdreavus does its best job to win this fight, but Kadabra, with all of its magic tricks, flies all over the board to take everyone out. I'm kind of in a weird spot with my items since I committed the Silk Scarf early, so I'm thinking of working in some support items to help my carry. A Mystic Water would give me a green orb for some extra sustain, but the 2 waters get taken from me, so I end up grabbing another Miracle Seed. I can throw a King's Rock onto a frontliner, and then make a Gracidia Flower for some bonus attack speed. Because I have Goomy, I definitely want to try to incorporate some dragons into my team to get some extra synergies. I make a small blunder and miss the Dratini, but get another one and a Deino with a reroll. I have some fairy Pokemon that can be replaced, so at the last second, I swap the dragons in. Suddenly, I'm at 5 synergies instead of 2, which gives a really nice power boost to my team. I match up against a normal light team next. With all the extra shielding, my damage output is really going to be put to the test. An Aqua Egg Soldew Loudred starts racking damage up very quickly as it gets multiple casts off in no time. The Audino provides nice support with a punching glove of its own. The story stays the same on my side. Misdreavus does a great job putting out damage, but I'm still lacking in overall strength. I know I need to make my team stronger to have any chance at surviving in the late game, so I leveled at 8 to activate more synergies. For now, a Bonsweet gets added in for Gourmet synergy, and I placed a Chef's Hat on Alcremie for some extra support boosts. Then, I also throw the Gracidia Flower on it to help my carry more. I also should have committed my other items looking back, but let's see how the battle ends up going. Right away, I know this Light 5 Belly Bolt is going to give me problems, and oh boy does it cause problems. It gets a handful of quick stacks on its muscle band for free, then it launches into my backline. From here, it's cooked. My main source of damage is down with no way to break through. Bellybolt and Rotom cleaned this one up quickly, and suddenly my HP went from a resource I had plenty of to being on the brink of elimination. Even with a weaker team, I should be able to beat Lugia and Ho-Oh just fine, so I switch around some units to have a dominantly Amorphous team. This gives me a better chance of generating more Amorphous portals at the Legendary Carousel, as I have less active synergies for the game to pull from. There ends up being 2 Amorphous portals for me to go for, both spread out pretty evenly. I bolt for the one in front of me, but it gets taken. Then, I see the other portal get taken as I try to pivot for it. That certainly didn't leave me very happy in the moment, and I make the decision to just hop into the remaining fairy portal since I'm at least running that as a side synergy. I don't have enough HP to fully pivot back to fairy, but I think I can still make something work, and pulling the 3-range Enamorous is definitely a way to make something work. Misdreavus served me well, but those items are getting moved immediately. And with having another Misdreavus on the bench, I don't have to risk losing my Amorphous 5 synergy. I also need to get 3 dragons back onto the field to activate some extra synergies, so I throw in the Frigibacks that I picked up in the last PvP round. With 2 Ditto on my bench, I am able to evolve it immediately and use the King's Rock to beef up its HP. Hopefully, this gives my frontline enough staying power to tank for Enamorous, who is going to have to work hard to keep me in this game. My Gracidia Flower also had a visual glitch off of my Alcremie, so I switched its position to try to keep Vanillish out of harm's way, unknowingly taking that speed buff away from Enamorous. Right away, we see a massive damage difference between the unevolved Misdreavus and Enamorous. I am able to punch a hole in the front line, and the Bellybolt goes down with relative ease. Having a newly bolstered front line with Arctibax takes a ton of pressure off of my backliners, with it absorbing a lot of hits from Ho-Oh. I'm able to win this one pretty handedly while getting some rolling done in the meantime. I held on to Snora in the shop since its synergies fit nicely with my team, but given my composition, I can't afford to replace any unit with it. Currently, my best play is to roll down and evolve as many units as I can. I do end up finding a Trapinch, which, when evolved, would be a dragon that activates more synergies for my team in place of Dratini. I would lose Flying, but would gain Ground and Bug. Unfortunately, with my frantic thinking, I replaced Dratini with Trapinch, causing me to lose my Dragon 3 synergy. I had the right idea, but executed too early. Up pops the Wild Team, where Absol and Darmanitan jump straight to my backline. Absol is able to do some good damage, and Darmanitan's health gets shredded until it can jump away. It's a pretty even fight up to this point, with Arctibax taking a lot of pressure off of Enamorous. Darm and Enamorous end up in a 1v1, except that Darm has a massive advantage. Dialga was able to cast and give Darm Resurrection before going down. Battle ends up being super close, but Darm's Zen mode healing allows it to outduel Enamorous. I get to move very early in the carousel, which allows me to sprint straight to the max revive. I need as much frontline as I can get for Enamorous, so giving my King's Rock Arctibax a second life will help a ton. Level 9 is out of the question for me, so I'm going to continue to roll down. I was able to evolve Trapinch during the PvP round, which gives me my synergies back. I find a Ghastly in the shop, who can definitely replace someone on my team. Because I have Arctibax and Vanillish, my Ice synergy is at 3, so I'm not really getting any use out of it. I can replace Vanillish with Ghastly to activate Ghost 2 synergy while still keeping my Ice synergy. So that's what I do. This puts me at 8 active synergies, and I'm pretty close to this team's final form, minus a few evolutions. I throw the Mach Ribbon onto Arctibax for a little bit of extra shield, and I throw the Pokemonnomicon onto Ghastly. Probably doesn't really benefit from it, but gets some extra AP. By the looks of this battle, we are going to have a Porygon 2 versus Enamorous showdown. As the front lines clash, those two units start racking up damage. The Electabuzz casts for a huge amount of damage, but it targeted my Arctibax that had dashed into the back line. The focus gets turned to Porygon 2, who goes down, and Enamorous does the rest of the work to cap off this victory. Immediately, I'm able to evolve Sligo, which is a big buff for my front line. I still have a few units I'd like to evolve, so I do some rolling, but to no avail. And we head into battle instead against a fellow Amorphous team. Looks like I'm not the only one who missed out on an Amorphous legendary, as there is a Zygarde staring me down. Once again, we see 2 front lines clash, and 2 backliners attempt to carry. The Ghost 2 Curse actually helps a ton on Zygarde, and Enamorous wreaks havoc. No need to watch the legendary Birds round, as I don't roll or anything. At the item choice, I pick up another Punching Glove, which promptly goes on to Misdreavus with the Mach Ribbon. I want to evolve that, so a couple of quick rolls gets me a Mismagius. Also getting really close to a Baxcalibur, so that's something to keep an eye on. Light 5 Ho-Oh is pretty scary, but I'm feeling like in terms of overall team strength, I have the upper hand. There doesn't really appear to be much damage outside of that Ho-Oh. I also see the benefits of my newly evolved Mismagius immediately, as combined with its items, it is able to keep pace and damage with Enamorous. With Ho-Oh having no support around it, my team is able to knock everything else out, and then finish off Ho-Oh. I try to do some quick rolling to find the last 2 Frigibacks I need, but I'm unable to find any before the next battle starts. It's another light team, but this time a well-itemized Bellybolt sits in the light spot, with a Xerneas behind it to pump out damage. Even with Xerneas not having a full set of carry items, it can still destroy a matchup with enough time to scale. The Shinx and Pikachu fall quickly, allowing my carries to target Bellybolt. Bellybolt, Dual Blade, and Xerneas are the last 3 standing, but are overwhelmed by the sheer amount of damage on the board. While the thought of a third Punching Glove is quite enticing, I decide to grab a Deep Sea Tooth for my Haunter. This allows more casts, which gives Haunter's fatigue more uptime. Keep rolling, desperate to get a Baxcalibur, but yet again to no avail. Sensing that the Wild team may be coming up soon, I move Arctibax back 1 space to prevent a unit from jumping onto my Haunter. Lo and behold, this pays off. I match up against the Wild team, and Darmanitan and Mightyena jump to the backline to target Arctibax. Although Absol is able to get into my backline very quickly, can only take out Haunter before Enamorous melts it. Darmanitan is the other big threat who has jumped to the corner for safety. Then my team is able to converge on Darm to take it out. Another player lost, so I've secured top 3 and I'm feeling pretty good about my chances to take this one. The Legendary Beasts PvE round comes and goes, where I grab another Gracidia Flower. Because of the visual bug, I forgot that there was already a Gracidia Flower equipped on our Creamy, so I do get stun locked for a minute, especially with trying to reposition my board. I put the other Gracidia Flower on Mismagius and decide, why not give Enamorous more attack speed? And into battle we go. Here's the Ho-Oh based light team again, which my repositioning heavily benefits from. We'll crit cast Light Spot Ho-Oh, gets its first cast off, but it only hits my Sandaconda. As the enemies approach, an Aquatic Wave pushes them, keeping Enamorous safe even longer. The combination of it and Mismagius, alongside Arctibax to keep them safe, are able to secure me a top 2 finish in this game. Get a Frigibax in my shop, and at this point, I'm only 1 away from a Baxcalibur. With there being at most 2 rounds left in this match, I roll all the way to 0, looking for the last one. And nothing. Oh well. A 3-star Ultra is a very difficult unit to achieve. Knowing there are dark units waiting in the final battle, I stack all of my units into the corner, although I make 1 critical error. The front lines engage, the crits ripping through every unit. Darmanitan makes it into the back line to knock out Haunter before taking enough damage to safely hop to the corner. Arctibax hangs on with its max revive, while Enamorous hammers out damage to the wild units. Here's where we see that critical positioning error. Enamorous gets beat down by Darmanitan, while Mismagius stays completely healthy. Enamorous falls, but not before taking out Ursaring. I momentarily have the numbers advantage, but Darmanitan 1v3s to secure the win, and I'm left wondering if my positioning error cost me first place. Regardless, as a Wild enthusiast myself, I can't be too upset about losing to Wild, especially when there were some own errors in my gameplay that contributed, specifically looking at you, Stage 21 Trapinch Blunder. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this game. I'm overcoming my fear of playing in 1250 plus lobbies because I have to learn how to play the best players Pokemon Auto Chess has to offer.